Judaculla Rock was predated from the Cherokee. It has glyphs and drawings from star patterns. It's known as the land of the giants. I'm Cindy Carter, and I live in the mountains of North Carolina, and I am here with Linda talking about Bigfoot. And Bigfoot came to me. I didn't go looking for it. Had no interest in Bigfoot. I didn't care about Bigfoot. I wasn't even on the radar of Bigfoot or the understanding of it. So, but I am a psychic and intuitive. And so I got a call, and that call led to me helping a family with Sasquatch on their land. And the people had left the property for 2 years before I got there. And so I had to be the mediator for this group of Sasquatch.
Well, tell me about that. Tell me about what they were experiencing. Did the Bigfoot presence on that land cause them to leave?
Yes, absolutely. They had a long history. Like when I went into the situation, I only knew a couple of things. They kind of left it like that so that I could be a clean slate and not be preloaded with information so that I could get a clear picture. And so as I got a phone call to go there and help. And when I did, I only knew that this family had been scared to death off of their land for a long time, and I only knew a long time. I didn't know exactly how long. And they were so scared that they took their two children and they left the property, and they came back to the property with a bodyguard, shooting guns like periodically to ward off any Sasquatch. And that's all I knew. And I knew that they had done some renovations to the property. The owners had done renovations to the property, and they jackhammered the side of a pond to redo the berm so that it was more solid. They were going to put some concrete or some rebar or something in there. As they were um, jackhammering, it busted through the bottom of the pond and opened up this cave underneath. So I knew that that had happened, and I knew that there was a problem. But and then I knew, they told me that the Sasquatch had come, and they knew Sasquatch lived on their land for years, and it was always peaceful. But this day, after that event, they came screaming at the house that night. They busted into all the vehicles. They made muddy handprints all over the front doors and tried to get in the house. Like they were scaring the family. They were so distraught and mad, is what was happening. And so the family moved from the big house that was on the property to the little house, and to see if that would help for a couple of days, and it didn't. And so they ended up leaving the property altogether.
How big a property was this? Do you know?
Probably about, yeah, I've been to it. It was about 40 acres, maybe 50 acres, way up in the mountains here of North Carolina near Highlands, Cashiers area, which has a lot of unusual activity anyway. It has UFOs. My friends who have the website skyshipsovercashiers.com are the ones who asked me to come there and help. And so this property was big. This lady lived there with her two kids, and she had a domestic dispute kind of thing going on. So she had a bodyguard who ended up being her boyfriend. And so he lived there with her. But, you know, when this happened, they had just guns, which they didn't feel was big enough to, ward this off. So they left.
So, so they were there. This had they had sightings of them when they were peaceful? How did they
Oh,
know they were
yeah.
there?
Oh, yeah. Well, the later, after I tell you the story of what I actually experienced, when afterwards, she showed me pictures on her computer and her little flip phone, because she had a flip phone. She opened up that flip phone and just scrolled through all those little pictures. And then on her computer, which she was not very good with computers, it was an old laptop. And I mean, she was bringing up pictures in Microsoft Word. It was just, or something. It was really hard to see them, but you could see them, and she wasn't good with computers. So I knew that she wasn't manipulating anything. And she was actually really scared to show them to me because they were, um, ETs involved. There was great aliens all in the pictures. There was no Sasquatch in the pictures. Oh, yes, there was. There were two babies in the pictures. This is afterwards when she showed me. And I had already told her there were two babies from my intuitive like experience. And
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
yeah, so she showed me the two babies, and it was an alien walking across the pasture. So this lady would sit at her house on her big old porch. This is a very large property, and sit on her big old southern front porch, and she would watch an ET take two babies across the pasture. There were caves all over the property, from one side of the pasture to the other, where she knows there are caves. She knows there were adult Sasquatch all over here. And in the back of her property, she called it a Jurassic Park because it was an anomaly of an ecosystem that everything grew huge. Everything. It was like a portal, but very large. So the leaves were extra large, the flora, the fauna, everything was huge. And it was just like a rainforest because there are rainforest type places around here. So, they have the perfect habitat. Well, they didn't know that when they jackhammered that dam, that the Sasquatch actually lived in that cave underneath it. And that's why the problem happened.
Right, exactly. Okay, so now that we have kind of an overview of why you were called and you called
Yeah.
out there without all of this knowledge that you've just
Yeah.
told me, tell me what happened after they called you.
Okay, so they called me, and Mary was driving, and Evelyn was in the back seat, and I was in the passenger seat, and we go driving off into the mountains. Well, preceding all this, there were synchronicities piling up for me that were ridiculous. I didn't have even enough money to come do this because I was trying to get another job. No one would hire me where I lived. So as we were driving to this house, we stopped for lunch. And within 15 minutes, because I used to own a restaurant, these people offered me a job and a place to live. And so, plus it was some more synchronicities that I can even talk about now, but amazingly just smashed up. So I kind of knew when the universe is throwing stuff at me like this that I am to follow. And that's still kind of the way I've been living my life. That's why sometimes I end up with no money trying to figure out where I'm going the next way. So as we're driving, we go into the mountains, and she says, we're almost there to this mountain. And there is a mountain in the distance, and you pull into their driveway, which it might have been a half a mile of a driveway. I mean, it was pretty long. And we go onto this beautiful country road, and we're driving down, uh, and it's this gravel driveway, and we come around a corner, and you could see pastures on the right, and it started feeling kind of ominous to me. I just get an ominous feeling, and I got real quiet. And all of a sudden, Mary goes, "Look," and she looked to the right, and there was this dog on the side of the road, but it wasn't a dog. It was black see-through, and it was like 4 feet tall, sitting with huge ears, huge pointed snout, and it looked like an Egyptian pharaoh dog. Mary slammed on her brakes, and I immediately got out of the car. It was like the first thing I wanted to do, and the first thing in my mind was gatekeeper. This was a gatekeeper. And that dog turned and looked at us with bright green eyes. Mary could say the same thing. And it turned and bounded down that pasture like in 20-foot strides that no dog could make, and then disappeared in the middle of a stride. So Mary and Eva and I are going, okay. That was my first ever dogman experience. I have had interdimensional experience in many places in Canada and in North Carolina, but not like that. So that was very clear. And it was like a gatekeeper situation because I had set my intention that what I was doing there was coming as a mediator. So I immediately just started talking in my mind to whomever it was in this interdimensional space that I was coming as the mediator, that Mary and Evelyn and I were not to be harmed, that here we are just here to help you. And we're here to help explain whatever it is to this family that got scared away from their property. And so we started driving in, and as we come up to the house, Mary remembers, we kind of remember it a little bit differently. I remember the dog in the pasture, and she remembers the dog at the top, right by the house, the same dog by the house, bounding in front of the car. And I don't really remember that because the minute we pulled up, I got out of the car and I was looking at the pond. I was going to the pond because it looked like a war zone. I could feel the energy there. It was like pulling me. I mean, I just got out and started walking. And Mary and Evelyn stayed up at the house on the porch. The house was not open, and there were big 2x4s with huge nails stuck in them, all upside down, all around the house. This is what the bodyguard had done to help the family keep the Sasquatch away from the house. So I go on down, and Mary says, maybe you shouldn't go. And I was like, no, I'm going. So I went on down to the pond, and I I'm an intuitive. I get kind of imagery, and then I get feeling and knowing. And it's a knowing that hits me so hard that I can't really be the one to question too much of it. I will kind of have some healthy discernment, but when I feel it so strongly, I just know it. And it seems to usually come true afterwards when I know the details. So I go walk, stand next to the pond, and I started immediately feeling sadness, pure sadness, sadness. And it was from like this group of beings in the forest. And so I was like, I can feel them right here on the edge of the forest, right next to the pond. And I was like, oh, I was so sorry. So I kept saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that this family has done this. And I was apologizing without even knowing why for this family. Then I started feeling angry. Like it was a myriad of emotions that came so quickly. I was just mad. I was agitated and I was shaking. My whole body was shaking. And it's because right then, as I'm trying to assimilate what's happening to my body and my mind and my emotions, this story comes into my head. Like, and I call it the book. It's like they slammed a book into my brain and I had to recite it to tell myself what the hell just happened. And I knew exactly what happened here. I knew that the family had busted through their cave, that they lived in there with their two babies, because I could feel grandpa, mom, dad, and two babies. I didn't know if it was boy or girl, but I could feel them. And I could even see, and now I say it looks like a Flintstone house, it's like rocks and ferns and, just like a cave house. They lived there like family. And so that's why I was so upset. So I could feel the anger of the grandpa, the concern from the family telling me the story that this had to be told. And then I could feel the innocence of these babies. And the fear, there was fear too from these Sasquatch that, if the humans could do this, what else can they do? And they didn't quite understand that it was an accident. They thought maybe it was on purpose, and it was because of something that happened. And I didn't know what happened, but the Sasquatch put in my brain two questions and for me to go ask her so it could be corroborated, I guess. So the question was, ask her what she took. Oh, okay. And then ask her what we gave her. Okay. So I had been crying. I was feeling very upset. I turned around and I had to calm down. So I walked up the hill to the house and I said, Mary and Evelyn, I got to stand alone for a minute before these people come up here because I'm so mad I could spit at them. I'm so mad. And so I calmed down enough, and the family came up. It was just her and her bodyguard. Bodyguard got out of the car, out of the truck, with a holster with a gun and a rifle. So they're scared to death to even be on the property. And I understand why, because what they did and what could have happened. So they sit down, they make pleasantries, they say, "This is Cindy, she's here just to kind of like help you understand what might have happened." And I said, "That was their house." And she went, "What?" And I said, the cave under the pond was their home." She went, "Oh." She realized that that's why they were so close all the time. But she didn't know they lived under there. And I said, "They lived under there. That was their house." And they went, "Oh." And I said, "And they want me to ask you a question." And she says, "What?" And I said, "What did you take?" And she goes, "Oh my God." So we got up and we were sitting on the porch, the side porch of the house. And we got up and went to the front door. Well, the front door is chewed up like the dogman had chewed 3/4 of the door away. There were claw marks on every baluster. There was hair hanging off. It was mud, red mud, because we have red mud here. Red mud everywhere. And I open the door, and my first thoughts are, "Oh my God, I bet the kitchen is trashed." Like Sasquatch are going to go for the food. That's no, they did not touch the kitchen. There was everything still sitting out from like the night before: mac and cheese, chips, nothing was touched. But in the living room, every part of the living room was filled with buckets and boxes of rocks. She and her boyfriend bodyguard had gone down to the property and noticed that this cave thing opened and that there were all these cool rocks. And they were carved in human faces, carved in owls, carved in animals, but mostly faces. I was astounded. And they felt radioactive, like they felt, whoa, whoa. These felt like meteorites to me. I'm very sensitive to that stuff. So I was, wow. So we went back out. We just looked at that. But on the back of the couch was a little girl's christening dress from upstairs that she didn't leave there. It had been brought down from upstairs in her room, and the big muddy handprint was put right on the front of it like that. So my later thought, after I was processing all this, is, "Oh my God, they were telling them that they hurt one of the babies in that cave. That's why they were so mad." I didn't get that part till later, but we went back outside. Okay, so that's all I know. I'm like, whoa, sitting down again with them on the porch. And I said, "Okay, now I have to ask you, what did they give you?" She goes, "Oh, oh." And she went over to near the front door and she picked up this little piece of burlap that had like little rocks. It had red on the outside, like a little print or ink. And then like a little, I don't know if it had a matchbox car and something blue. It was kind of cute. And I said, "That was their apology." And I didn't know then when it had been brought back, but it had been brought back 2 weeks before I got there. Now there was a span of time of 2 years, and then they brought the apology. And then they summoned whoever it was to come tell the story. I think that's how it happened. But as she's telling me this, she was like devastated that she didn't see these signs because she thought she was so close to them, and she was. But she was scared to death. And another reason is because when she picked up one of those rocks, she picked up, maybe the last one she picked up, I guess, because she wouldn't touch them, um, burnt the inside of her hand with radioactivity. And just she ended up in the ER. So these were, probably a type of radioactive rock. And so she was scared. that she had been harmed because of what they did, and they didn't know what they did wrong. So I told them, and I told them what to do to overcome, the tragedy for the Sasquatch. I was thinking only of the Sasquatch at this time. I was fully on their side. And I said, what you have to do is apologize in some ceremonial, maybe way. And the only reason I say ceremonial is because it's very obvious for people who don't have keen intention and can't hold a thought very long. Ceremony helps you sustain an idea. So I told them to gift them all the rocks back and offer other offerings. And they did that. And so all the things stopped on the land. It was done. They did go back to the land every once in a while, but they had fully established themselves somewhere else. The land was in a trust of a family. And I think because she left it abandoned for 2 years, some other family members took it over. I wanted to go back there so bad, but I couldn't.
So
So,
no word if there are still any kind of Bigfoot activity on the property then.
well, actually, they called me maybe 6 months later because they thought where they lived was only a mile down the road on the same mountainside. And so they said the Sasquatch had just come to live near them again. They were all over the property there, but they wanted to know about an area, and they asked me to come there that they thought might have been a burial ground for their ancient Sasquatch. And I asked them why they thought that. They said, you just need to come look. And so I made my way over there, and they met me at the bottom of the mountain and brought me up in their little truck. And we got out and we hiked about, I don't know, 30 minutes. And we came upon these megaliths. You know, I call them megaliths because the way these rocks formed and meshed into each other are unusual. And they did look like they were put in shapes. And I did feel that it could have been something very ancient, but I did not feel any current activity happening there with them. So I told them, then I brought them a flute and I taught them how to interact with interdimensional beings in a kind way so that they don't end up in the same situation as they were before. So I kind of taught them how to sit in the forest and feel the energy of an area. And then I taught them how to kind of communicate an intention with sound, either through toning, sounds through your mouth, whistling, song, or the flute. And they told me that everything was really good on their land, but that was about 8 months after. 6 months they contacted me. I went out there, and then they told me 2 months after that everything is okay, and I never heard another word. She was very afraid for her name or the story to get out there, but the story is on skyshipsovercashiers.com. If you put in little alien dude in the search bar, it comes up.
You can
Because
find it. Tell me
yeah,
about those rocks. Now, did you take a good look at the rocks with the
yeah,
faces carved
I
in them?
actually have one sitting behind
Yeah.
me. It's just small, yeah.
Can you
And
bring it up to the
yeah,
camera?
let me
You
get it.
might be
Hang
able
on.
to see
Yeah,
it. Sure.
I asked, if it was okay if I took one,
Hmm.
and I immediately got back yes. I didn't ask her, I asked the Sasquatch if it was okay, because I wasn't going to violate, what this family had already violated. But the reason I was allowed to touch them is because I didn't do what this family did to them.
Did you feel like
So
the one you brought home with you was radioactive in any way or had any kind of
no,
radiation
no,
in?
no. There were some in there that were darker in color and felt like, I'm not really knowledgeable about all stones, but they felt like tektites or meteorites. And you can feel those. You can feel the energy of those really strongly. And I didn't feel that from this one that I picked up. This one was sitting, I didn't want to go through and go, oh, I like that one or that one. This was such an intense situation that I wasn't shopping, which I wish I had because I took a few pictures of these rocks and there were some that were actually had faces carved. And I thought, God, I wish I had had one of those. But I just took the nearest one, and it's kind of ironic, the one I took. So I took this one. It looks like a portal to me. It's flat on the bottom, and it's just got that face here that's another color. Feels like a portal. Well, ironically, my friend had just been to Ireland in one of the, I call them death portals, and he had gotten me this one.
Remarkably alike, yes. Wow. Hmm.
I'm supposed to have these for some reason, and so that's kind of cool.
Well, tell
But yeah,
me, something that's come up in a few of the interviews that I have done, and I've done several at this point, but one of the things that's come up about these interdimensional beings and their ability to come and go has to do with some form of disturbance, whether it be, digging, even cremation,
yes,
possibly, something that disturbs
yes,
the physical properties of matter that holds things together.
yeah.
Did you sense that at this location that
Oh,
that was?
it was the first thing I
Mhm.
felt, the first thing, because you go to this pristine property and you see this, uh, dam area around the pond that just looks like a war zone. So I'm immediately drawn to the disturbance. And this is how that all happened, was the disturbance. And I've heard this, and after this happened, and I did have an interview on YouTube that went kind of viral for one day until they took it and submersed it. They didn't want people to know the benevolence behind Sasquatch because they apologized to this family and became friends with them again. That's part of the story that nobody's going to want to pick up because they want it to be all about the maiming or the, you know, infiltration of the house. There are I didn't go into some of the other parts of when I went in the house. If you want me to do that,
Sure.
this is
Yeah.
some of the most important kind of features about it, showing the benevolence of this family of Sasquatch. So after this disturbance, they really wanted this family to know what the heck just happened. So that's why they had brought down that christening dress onto the living room couch. So after we were done talking, we went inside. She goes, "I'm going to take you upstairs," and this is where they went. All the Sasquatch went upstairs to the little girl's room. Is a Jack and Jill bath, little girl, little boy, with a bathroom in the middle. And so they were in the little girl's room, and she had crayons and coloring stuff. Everything's just left like they just walked out. And so it was quite messy. There was stuff everywhere because I guess it looked like maybe the baby Sasquatches were all over the kid little girl's room. So there were drawings all over the walls. And you can also see those on skyshipsovercashiers.com. But I'm telling you, they had taken big crayons and drawn faces, big, huge faces with big eyes and a mouth, way up towards the ceiling, because maybe that was how tall they were. And then they drew a pond, an oval with a big X in it, and then water going down. And then they drew the cave under it and put little faces in the cave. Well, I mean, they were so scared they couldn't get the message. There were little kids drawings of faces down by the wall on the way low on the wall, like a foot, 2 feet off the wall. And then these were high ceilings, probably at least 11 feet ceilings. They were up towards 8 and 9 feet, the drawings. So they were telling the story. And the, like, they didn't harm too much stuff, but the one thing they harmed in the house was the toilet. They took that whole thing apart. They had toothbrushes down in it. They had stuff down in it. They had been playing. Somebody was playing in there. So it shows their benevolence, and they act like any family. We're going to tell them the story since we can't speak their language because they're
Exactly.
just,
So you'd mentioned aliens. Are there craft seen out that way? Is
yes.
it just the alien beings? What's going on with that?
Well, apparently the Cashers area has always had a lot of different sightings of every kind of thing, but a lot of UFOs and a lot of aberrations like in the sky, very unusual things. Probably it's almost like they were testing blue beam technology out there. There's a lady who has seen, and but photographed like 20, 30, 40 foot Jesuses, holograms in the sky. She's seen so many ships, not just her, but the reason my friends, made their website was because she worked in a health food store, and these deep state, like not deep state, but deep undercover military people who lived in the area would tell her stories anonymously. And then after a couple of years, they started like really trusting her. And she used to be a Detroit newspaper writer, an editor. So she was all about news and taking facts. And so she just started writing facts and writing down all the different stories that these people were having. And there's a lot of, you know, dumb activity around this area. And that's where most of the stories started, were dumb activities. So that was deep underground military bases. And so along with that comes UFOs coming out of lakes, into lakes, UFOs all across the area. I have seen several when I lived up there when the Sasquatch sent me to that place to live and work. I saw all kinds of things. And so so the validity was that these were military people talking about the experimentation on cryptids, deep underground, and their fear of retaliation from the government for exposing it.
So did you feel like the government was instrumental in creating these creatures or just utilizing them in some way? Or
I believe that they probably had genetic anomalies, that they didn't create them, because I believe they are human, um, advanced human species, is what I believe. We're all hybridized. Um, and so I believe that they have been used and abused. And they're used as the scapegoat for every missing person when it can be uh, ETs, or it could be other anomalies that are really awful to deal with. There are, so many that are not benevolent.
so there was some information that these underground bases have something to do with experimentation with the cryptids in the area.
Yes.
Does that
Yeah.
include the aliens?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I can't say for sure what they were working on, but they were working on genetic testing in a couple of these DUMBs. And then there were advanced kind of technologies in some of them. Um, and there's some of these DUMBs are put in places that have that zero magnetism so that they can do portal work or advanced work. It's hard to say which portal does what. I mean, which dumb does what. But it's a gambit of really ugly activity that started in the 50s and 60s here. And so there are people that, as they start aging, they're going to start talking a little bit about it. And so I believe that you know, Sasquatch has been hybridized, bred at some points. And that's why you can run up on these benevolent families that feel so original human, that haven't been hybridized, that They lived here originally. They were here. They have access to the inner earth system. And that's what I started learning about later, because after this experience, I was pretty open to Sasquatch and that whole idea. And so I did go seeking some people to ask them, what did I just see and what did I just experience? Is this normal? Yes, it is. ETs and Sasquatch are often seen together, and UFOs. But I believe that this little ET that she had, it was a little gray alien. There was only one, um, was a babysitter for the little Sasquatch. That's what she said. That's what we call her, Amanda, because she doesn't want her name told about. But that's what she thought it was, a babysitter, because she saw it at 9 to 5, taking care of babies.
Exactly. So,
Like,
going back to the hybridization and these dumb facilities, um, was there any knowledge as to what the intent or the purpose is for this experimentation?
um, I don't know that anyone that I've run into could answer that um, truthfully. I think anyone would be guessing on the true intention of that, other than um, when you look at intentions of nefarious beings, necrosis is the number one achievement, acts of death. So, how far do you want to take the intention? They wanted to breed these beings and to be able to consume energy, because on an earth, if you have consumers of human energy, you have necrosis as a basis for the grid. It's an ugly part of the yin and yang, what we live here.
True.
But the government was highly involved in it, and um, I believe that that has gone, maybe not gone away, but lessened dramatically.
Mhm.
I don't think it's happening now.
Well, let's go back to this place and the incident that happened that you were so involved with there. Somebody else came on the property, and you don't think they were disturbed at all by these Bigfoot at the property, the new
No,
people that came in? That was
no,
done.
there,
That was
no,
all.
because they were family members. And I don't know if they put the house on the market. I never saw it come on the market. I actually was so concerned after this. I was in real estate prior to my this spiritual path that I took, and so I was willing to like try to find a grant to buy this $1 million property, to hold it so that nobody would disturb. And so I talked to several people who had been involved with Sasquatch for years, like decades, and I sought them out after this, and I asked them, uh, is this something I should attempt? I feel bad about them losing their home. And one guy said to me, when do you think it's your idea that you have to worry about a Sasquatch? Sasquatch is much more advanced than you, and they can figure out a house way easier than you. So they're not, you know, don't worry about them. So I didn't. I took that as it's not my job.
So that was this one location the only experience you've had with Bigfoot, or were there others?
No, after this, it was like I was free game for experiences. So where I was working was a barbecue restaurant, and they had just opened the day before, so they needed some managerial experience. So I was kind of working there with them, and I would go home to my apartment, and I had sticks left for me at my car like almost every day for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I started researching, is this like normal? Because I really didn't care about the Bigfoot shows, or at that time, this was 2000, no, this was 2018. No, 2014 when this happened. 2014. So there were no shows, I don't think, on at that time. I didn't watch TV anyway, so I wouldn't have known. So I wasn't doing mainstream Bigfoot research. I would just find somebody who had been, communing with them for decades and ask them questions. I would much rather have taken a Native American approach to this whole Bigfoot activity than I would anything else. But a lot of stick activity, glyphs, you call them, things started disappearing in my house. That normally like a favorite pair of earrings, only one would be gone. It's like, I know I'm not losing these things. I'm not that crazy. What's happening? And they would end up in my locked car on my dashboard. What? So, before this, I had had interdimensional experiences. But this was nothing like that. I was like, so now they're truly interdimensional. They're in my space and I'm not even knowing they're here. And so very interesting stuff was occurring. And then I started asking the true identity and origin of Sasquatch. Just, in my mind, and I wasn't doing research online or anything like this. When I am in information, I'm in universal information. I'm trying to understand it from a universal place, not an internet place. So I would, look up a few things and then understand it a little better and then go on my way. But I started asking the universe, could you, I feel like Sasquatch is connected to inner earth. Why do I think this? And if so, start showing me what inner earth is like. I was actually doing portal work in Canada with an inventor in Canada, and they were using technology to measure the portals before and after I left. So I had this very unusual ability to do kind of interdimensional work, and so that's why people ask me to do stuff. And so um, I forget where I'm at now. I went to
You
Canada.
you 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 had an idea that they were part of Inner Earth, and you'd ask the
Oh yes,
universe,
yes,
the origins
yeah.
of Bigfoot.
I asked the origin of Bigfoot and said, just show me. Because I'm at this point, I was at this point in my spiritual process that I didn't want to be shown apparitions. I did not want, non-sighted beings talking to me anymore. I didn't, interdimensional archangels, whatever they are, that don't take body. If you can't bring me information from a body, I don't really want it right now. That's where I was in my spiritual process. And so people started showing up at this restaurant, and all the employees were going, what is going on? Do you see these people? They were 7 feet tall, every one of them. The women, the men, the women were over 6 feet. The men were definitely 7 feet. They were, 200 and 300 pounds, huge, hairy people. And they would come in and eat tons of barbecue for like 2 weeks. And there is a place nearby this barbecue restaurant called Judaculla Rock. And Judaculla Rock was predated from the Cherokee. It has glyphs and drawings from star patterns from the Pleiades. It shows little alien beings and rocket ships kind of things, different kind of glyphs on this rock. And it's known as the land of the giants. Well, I feel like I opened up a portal to the land of the giants. These people showed up in real form, and I could talk to them and ask them. So the restaurant said, we want to open up a little antique ice cream shop, next door. You want to help? And I'm like, sure. So this is during that 2 week span. So I go down there, and we're like the first day open of ice cream. And I didn't want anyone really to come in because we were just testing all the equipment. And this guy comes rolling in on his bicycle, and he just comes barreling in the door for ice cream. I'm here for ice cream. I said, okay, well, have a seat. We sat down, and I got ready to make him a milkshake. And he goes, I haven't been out of my house in 2 years. I said, really? He goes, yeah, I lost my job. I'm autistic. I lost my job because I'm an electrician, but I couldn't handle like the people. And I was like, oh, I said, so you just been at home? He goes, yeah, just at home. He goes, but I had to leave today and I haven't even ridden a bike. So I got my neighbor's bike. And I said, did you know where you were going? He goes, no. And I said, oh, so you just went driving? He goes, yeah. And he showed up right here. I was like, okay, something's going on. So I give him his milkshake and he goes, can I start telling you about the 21 species of bird in the so-and-so valley of the caverns of so-and-so in New Mexico? Yes, you can. So he sat there and told me these species, and he had knew every like name of every one of them, rattled off these names of this inner earth cavern in New Mexico and the species of birds. Okay. So I had to basically kick him out of there. He was there for hours. I kicked him out, like, go on home now. Thank you for your information. And he left. I went home. I changed my clothes. I went outside. It was beautiful, like sunset. And well, it wasn't sunset yet. It was like still a couple hours from that, but I was enjoying the light. And I was sitting out there with my eyes closed and in the sunshine. And I hear, oh, there's a blue jay behind your head. And I went, okay. And it was him. He was on the bike. He hadn't left. And because I lived within walking distance of this restaurant. So I'm like, okay. And so he said, that reminds me of those birds in the so-and-so caverns. And he named another cavern and went on again. I mean, I asked for this. So I was gracious. And I said, thank you so much for your information. You really helped me understand. And then he went on his way. So I knew then the universe will bring you, if you fully envelop yourself like into the understanding of like the unknown, you can learn about the unknown by the asking. And it's how deep is your intention of asking. And mine was pretty deep at that time because I was not really, understanding why I was working in a barbecue restaurant. Um, it was truly not what I thought was a high vibe environment. It was actually a low vibe environment. And that's why I was there. And because it obviously I needed to feel and experience myself at that level. So it was a lot of integration and a lot of unusual activity. So after that experience, I kind of went quiet. After all that, I went like, okay, I know y'all are here. You're from Inner Earth. I get it. That's how I am. I'm not obsessed with you. Like, okay, we're done. Like, all right, see you later. Well, they would come and go and come and go. And for 4 years, I did not think about them. I went to Canada. I was in Canada for 3 or 4 years doing work out there. And then I came home and was just trying to figure out what to do here at home. And a friend of mine said, your story is fascinating. Could I interview you? And his name is David Lear. And I was like, yeah. This is John Lear's brother, and he's like my best friend. And he lives really close here to me. I purposely moved out here near him and his wife. And so David said, let me interview you. Well, after that interview, it went kind of viral, but that somebody in the government or whoever took it down. And then you could still find it in ways, but it wasn't on any kind of search if you searched it. And I got phone calls from everybody and emails and correspondence. And I started listening to these stories of these people, and they were a lot of indigenous, a lot of Native Americans, a lot of First Nations. And they would call me from Canada, they would call me from here to tell me their stories or what their grandma told them or their experience in the hospital that the Sasquatch came to them during surgery, to help. And it was just like, this was a former police officer in the First Nations of Canada telling me this story. How can this not be true? Like I'm completely convinced. I had been completely convinced. So I never really had to. It's almost like I reversed. I know about them. I understand them at a level like that they're part of me. And that's what it felt like to be with an elder like that. And so I never went into the fascination part too hard. But then people started inviting me to go places. So I came to Missouri. I went to the Ozarks um, with Shane Carpenter and another person who likes to remain anonymous. And so I went and we had phenomenal experience um, out on the 400. And there's that came, remember you just asked me that most of these experiences come from destruction. Well, the 400 came from destruction. The man who lived there, or he didn't live there, it was a hunting property of his family's. He was the final heir, I guess, and he had a little trailer up there on the 400. And he decided that, after a while, he had so many acres, he could just, harvest some of the trees. So he had some guys come out there and start harvesting the trees. Well, the Sasquatch were not having it. They had 400 acres to roam there, but they were pissed that this patch was taken, and they went to his trailer while he was inside. Now he's an old hunter, and he hosted hunting parties there all the time. Um, was inside with his rifle, scared to death because these Sasquatch came and ripped the stovepipe off his stove, and there was a hole this big in the trailer. He could see them ripping the stuff off the wall. And then the whole trailer would shake. And then they tore down his like TV antenna, radio TV antenna, huge, like 20 feet in the air, just ripped that off the ground. And so he was scared to death. So he never went back. And then he told a friend about it, and that friend told Shane. And Shane said, I want to go. And he goes, okay, well, if you want to go and keep them busy, keep them occupied, go for it. So when we went, Shane knows where the elders are. He knows where the children are. And we made a trek up to where the elders are. And they did not want us there. The Sasquatch did not want us there. And we're talking rugged land. We were on side by side and a Polaris with a roof. And thank God it had bars all around because we would have been killed coming down this mountain. We got up to the top, and it probably took 30, 40 minutes in a side by side going straight up to the top of this mountain where he knew the elders lived. And there was no trails because he had only walked it a couple times. And so we were up there. We landed at the top. The weather was like nice, blue, sunny, and had been all day. 30 minutes, we got up there, black, black clouds so close to us. It happened within 2 minutes of us getting there. We had to get back on our vehicles and race off that mountain. There was lightning and thunder, and I believe they created it for us to get us off the mountain. That's my belief. And threw us down that mountain, and we had to fly down that mountain as fast as we could, running over trees and rocks and stumps. And Shane was screaming, I was screaming. We were going fast. It was really scary and exciting at the same time. So, and then we had them breathing on our tent, that night, and they threw rocks into like the little kids, they threw rocks down into the back of the Polaris, the little trunk area. You could hear them ping, ping. Oh, and then we were a little concerned about a tree that could come down on our tent because of all that wind and rain the night before. So I kept saying to them, do you think we should, take that tree down? It was kind of a young sapling, but it would hurt us if it comes down on our tent. And they were like, no, I think it's okay. It's like leaning in a whole different direction that it could go, like, okay. So um, we went to sleep, and we were asleep for a couple hours, and we hear, and there was no wind at the time. There was just sprinkling. And that tree had been like pushed the other way, all the way down, and it hit one of the four-wheelers. It just graced the side of the four-wheeler, but it was down the opposite direction. So we knew they pushed that thing down so it wouldn't harm us. Thanks.
Do you have any communication with the Sasquatch out there on the 400?
Um, it was kind of an interesting environment when you're with um, people that don't believe in that, or they want concrete evidence and proof. So I was basically Sasquatch bait, and I was used. I mean, they would agree, um, to garner some activity. And so we would go off in another area, not the 400, but in the Mark Twain Forest. And we went off in another area, and I have the ability just to say, not here, but over there. And we would go over there, and they would let me out with a recorder in my hand, and I would just walk. I love being in the woods. I just love it. So I'm just kind of naive, and I'm just walking. Well, under the audible range of my ear and on this recorder are all kinds of hoops and hollers and smacks and tree knocks and owl hoots, just crazy amounts under the audible range. Now I could feel them when I'm walking because I scouted out the area anyway because I could feel them. And so when I get a little bit further in, it's like the tapping and the noise and the rocks and the what? I can't even hear it. So that's what they were looking for. I mean, one of them was truly interested in recordings. This is his thing. And so I started showing him how to gift, and he had started doing that. Shane was gifting at that time, but he was gifting like power bars in a complicated series of containers that to see if they could open them. And of course they did. And they left the wrapper inside and closed it back up for him. So I I have a hard time because I don't need to be with researchers. Um, I didn't really communicate with them that night or that I was on the 400, but I certainly did when I was alone with just the one other guy and his girlfriend out in the woods. Because these felt really wild. Like they had babies, uh, and we could hear them coming to one of the recorders, and they ping the recorders with sonar. This is what the recording guy, he's become kind of an expert on like what he understands as Sasquatch sounds and not. And he recently shared one with me with them howling, hooting, and making noises, maybe communicating with each other. And so it's kind of an interesting thing to be with people that need proof when I don't need proof. So I don't even feel led to like try to communicate with them. Um, that family of Sasquatch needed me to communicate. So I kind of don't use stuff until I have to use it, but I get the feelings of things. And I knew in certain areas, no, we're not going over there. They're over there, we're not going over there. And so, especially being thrown off that mountain with an instant thunderstorm, I realized, you know, there are places you can't just go.
So
Mm-mm.
in your opinion, we're going to kind of backtrack a little bit here.
Yeah,
Some things I want to clarify for sure.
sure, sure.
In your opinion, you believe all of them are from inner Earth.
I believe so. Yeah.
So do they
Now,
come and go from inner Earth?
yes, because I believe they have inhabited UFOs, have
So you believe they're
utilized UFOs.
all Bigfoot are interdimensional beings.
I believe that, all of them. Now,
And
the abilities of each one are different because when fear and anger are involved, um, I believe they have a harder time moving through portals or activating themselves. Um, because so it keeps you in a planetary kind of earthly physical space.
and
They have to use their heart space to move beyond that.
and do you believe that any of the Bigfoot that are perceived run into, encounters that people have are part of the hybrid system that you feel that is in place by these underground bases?
I the ones I feel have been, altered malevolently are the scary ones, the scariest episodes that people talk about that they have. And I have encountered people who warn me all the time about going into the woods and being out there in the woods. And I do take a lot of caution now because of some of the stories that I have heard, and mostly on YouTube. But I've never really had too many people tell me their scary stories personally, because everyone that came to me was spilling out their benevolent stories because nobody would believe that they were actually kind interactions, even after something scary happened. So, yeah, I think the most hybridized ones, and same with humans, the most hybridized, inbred humans are the ones that are nefarious and malevolent, reptilian based. That's got to happen in Sasquatch land too. So
Well,
I don't like,
it's all very interesting. I mean, portions of this I've heard before, but a lot of it I haven't. So it's a whole new kind of take on the whole Bigfoot phenomena and what people might be experiencing out there.
yeah. It's it runs such a gamut, and I've really over the last couple of years tried to stay completely out of the Bigfoot thing because it's gotten really ugly, and there are a lot of charlatans out there claiming to have this interdimensional understanding or clout or hierarchy, and it's just not true. And a lot of people take the spiritual aspect of this too far with Bigfoot. And, I know personally handfuls of psychics who believe that they're contacting Bigfoot all the time, like, oh, they're standing behind you. And they can name their names and stuff. And it's like, that's bullshit. And so I'm kind of sick of it, the bullshit. But I understand it. And people want to connect with something interdimensional, especially something fascinating. And, fascination is an interesting concept because, I also do spiritual counseling, and the Bigfoot people, I went to a conference in Washington State, and the men, huge men, would come at me and just hug me and cry. They have such repressed feelings. They don't understand what happens when they interact with Sasquatch. It's a heart opening experience that uh, touches their cells, and no human has ever done that for them. And so I've had to counsel some that, you don't need to leave your wife for a Sasquatch. That's happened. Fascination becomes like mental illness at some point. And so I think there's not a whole lot of balanced, I haven't found too many balanced people in Bigfoot land.
I think that's true in a lot of anything paranormal.
Yeah.
It does appear that they can take it in a lot of different directions. Either they're obsessed with the physical aspects of it, like you said, or they're obsessed with at times with the spiritual aspects of
Yeah.
the something very odd and different. It speaks volumes more about the human element
Yeah. Yeah,
than it
that's
does
right.
about the cryptid.
That's exactly right. Because they're just doing their thing.
Yeah.
It's how we're interpreting them.
Mhm.
And I think there's going to be and I've been watching kind of a trend happening. And I watch trends, and I kind of, things do come, true later. And so the trend I'm watching now is that there's some people that are very, very well known in Bigfoot land, um, that have a healthy, like, not even respect. It's a healthy, like, barrier to the Bigfoot. I'm gonna talk about them and I'm gonna say stuff, but I don't want them near me. Well, they're the first one that's gonna get screwed over by a Bigfoot. You know what I mean? They're gonna mess with you because you
Yeah.
just said that, And so I watched it happen. I announced it to a friend of mine a year ago. I said, "You watch this. It's just gonna happen." And these people are getting messed with. And Bigfoot energy does affect, like, all aspects of your life. It can affect all aspects of your life. It can affect you financially, emotionally, spiritually, where you live, where you don't live, who will hire you, who won't hire you. Um, and it's very dramatic when it happens. and it's not normal. And so you have to ask yourself, how much influence do you want an interdimensional being having over you? So that's when I have an understanding of sovereignty, like cellular sovereignty and auric sovereignty, and I am not fascinated by Sasquatch or ETs or any of the others. I feel like they're equal to me, and I can take them or leave them. And that puts me in a place where it's hard for me to enjoy a lot of the Bigfoot stuff because it's so contrived.
And it's also put you in a place where you cannot be manipulated easily,
Right.
regarding your views and opinions or just
Yeah. Well, I have been through some ultimate illusion. Uh, I had a very large spiritual awakening in 2007. They called me a walk-in. I didn't know what that was, but I was a totally different person. And it happened on my birthday, April Fool's Day. Like I woke up a totally different person and didn't really recognize my kids and had to look at them and go, oh my God, they're so beautiful. And they just look different to me. I divorced my husband that day. I sold my business that day. I got out of my house that day. Everything changed for me. I went into the woods with a shaman 2 weeks later, and I didn't come out for 3 years. Like I did, I was selling real estate, but I would race to the woods because I was learning about interdimensionality and my new abilities that I had, which were hugely psychic and intuitive. But I had energy coming off my hands that I couldn't understand. And so I went seeking, information, and I would get information from individuals that were considered experts at things, either meditation or whatever. And I would go, and like, there's more. So I ended up in Canada with someone I believe was a true time traveler. And he was doing inventions. He would go to the future, bring back healing inventions and energy inventions and build them in front of me and use them and heal people. And so he was a huge target to every three-letter agency in the United States and Canada. And so I was immediately put on the radar of all the agencies in, I guess this was 2011, 2011, 2010, 2010. And by 2013, I ended up in such a deceptive place, manipulated place that I had to leave. My bank accounts were frozen. Uh, I had air marshals sitting on every flight with me back and forth to Canada. But they realized that I was the benevolent one through all this. And they ended up selling my frequencies to three-letter agencies, the people I was with, because they could make a lot of money off that. And when I realized that that was happening, that's when I left immediately. So I was kind of forced through that situation to learn sovereignty for myself, even though that's what I was being taught, sovereignty. I truly didn't have it because of the situation I was in. So discernment is like the number one thing on my mind now. And I'm not going to get sucked into fascination for anything, even healing, interdimensional healing, three-letter agencies, cloning facilities, like all that information is fascinating, but it has nothing to do with the sovereignty of me. So I'm, you know, kind of in
Well,
an interesting place.
something about it has nothing to do with Bigfoot, but I'm just interested. So,
Yeah,
something you said about that they would take your energy. They would.
yeah.
How were they able to capture that?
It's energy harvesting. And what they did with me over a 4 year span was they brought my spiritual energy, my spiritual understanding. They kind of used me like a monk. I went through teachings and sits, and I would do these sits and these teachings, and it would bring me interdimensionally or through the dimensions of consciousness until I was at a very heightened state after 4 years, like vibrating at a level like crazy because I was because I woke up a different person on April 1st, 2007, I had a frequency that was much different, a vibration that was much different than other humans. Because I had resurrected my body. I was clearly extremely depressed. My body was dying um, from all kinds of maladies and injuries and my own decisions. I was just dying. I thought I was in a just end of my life. And I flipped it subconsciously with angelic help or whatever. I don't even know how to explain it really, but it flipped. All the body flipped, the spiritual flipped, the emotions flipped. That frequency, that vibration, we have a frequency fence across the earth, and it busted through the fence. I was immediately on the radar of agencies because of the frequency. So I was led to this guy in Canada to work with for him to bring me to the spiritual height that they could vibrationally, like a monk. And then I went on a portal tour of inner earth portals, galactic portals, ascension portals, and angelic portals. And they measured them before and afterwards. And then, but to harvest my own frequency probably was done through the devices that he used as healing devices that were also healing me.
And
Uh,
did that occur with your cooperation or your knowledge, or was this something that was
totally without my knowledge.
totally without your
Totally,
knowledge?
totally without. I was a spiritual naive kindergartner.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I came into this body like it was a new human body, and I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know how the spiritual worked. I didn't have any understanding of the history. Like I was a minivan mom. No, I had three businesses. I served on two nonprofits. No, I don't have anything to do with spirituality right now. So it came hard and fast. And so, no, it was not, uh, I did not agree. I did not comply. I complied, but it was all deceptive. They would get me to say yes to things that I thought were good, honest, benevolent things that were not against me.
So
They were
how did you find out that energy harvesting was happening?
It had gotten to a point where all the synchronicities were kind of leading me to this condo. I was coming back and forth. I had sold my real estate business to be part of this business, this energy healing business. And so I had given it my all. I was down to very little money, and I was living in this condo. This condo came all of a sudden, and I was started thinking, how did this condo even come to me? And it was through Freemasons. He was a Freemason. I started looking him up, the guy who rented me the condo, and he was a Freemason. And so I thought, okay, something's happening. I started getting sicker and sicker and sicker. This is after the portal tour, after they've done sold my frequencies, and I didn't even know it. I'm laying in that bed, getting sicker and sicker. And I remember sitting up going, I'm dying. And I walked to an urgent care 2 miles away and went inside and got blood pressure medicine and thyroid medicine because I had been off of them for 6 months. I had a friend come over who was an EMF expert, and he had all the equipment for EMFs. So he had like these meters and everything. He started right over my bed. There were 5 arcing frequencies right across my heart space. And those were basically death frequencies. He left, and one of the frequencies was a radio frequency. So they can use radio frequencies, high powered, low radio frequencies. And this one was playing music from a radio tower right across my head, like right across my chest. And I knew then I put it all together. I had to kind of like come out of it to realize I had to get to my physical place again. Like, okay, I'm in my body, and this isn't feeling right, and this didn't looking right. They must have sold me out. Where did they get all that money? Just like a week earlier, they had been paid out for the portal tour. And it was in the, it's thousands of dollars because they started spending money that they didn't have, but before that. So I said right then, I said, I'm leaving. I'm just gonna leave. They had given me a car. I'd had to get the car back and I had to leave without them knowing. I I just was not gonna let anybody know because they're very powerful people that could use interdimensional means to hold you somewhere. And I remember saying I have just enough money for a quick air flight. So this is before Uber and all that. So I had one friend that wouldn't tell him in Canada that I could tell and that I'm leaving. And will you help me? Help me get to the airport and help me take some of my stuff away. And he said, sure. So he took me to the airport and I left and I started having the three-letter agencies knew then that I was benevolent, that I had nothing to do with that. So all my surveillance stopped, all of it. The minute I decided to leave it, because they got what they wanted.
When you say three-letter agencies, what do you mean by that?
DOD, CIA, FBI.
Okay, so it was all government based
Yeah. And
and
once
not just in the United States, it was Canada too.
oh yes. I've been hit with weaponry on 3 different occasions, microwave weapons that left welts on my body from helicopters. One was from a seaplane. We lived on the lake Okanagan in Kelowna. And so, yeah, everything was used against us. Interdimensional activity was used against us. And I was impervious to all the attacks, except for a couple welts on me. They would crumble from it. And it didn't affect me as much.
So you were able to find out that it was connected with all of this, how?
Uh, just by deducing what had happened to me and like the reality of it. It was so blatant at the end. It was blatant that they were done with me. They didn't really want me there for any kind of business situation or partnership. They had sold me out to
Mhm.
the cloning facilities.
And do
Hi.
you think that they actually cloned your energy field?
Oh, I believe that. Yes.
Yeah, and put that
Yeah.
elsewhere. Do you
Yeah.
think that's part of maybe what they're doing with Bigfoot or these interdimensional beings, that they're trying to clone that as well and put that into
Yes.
a maybe even to human form?
Transhumanism is a real thing.
Mhm.
And it's not all machine human. It's going to be cryptid human, interdimensional human. Um, there, there's so many ways that they're going to bastardize the frequencies of the origin of the God source. So I was told that I had the highest luminosity level that they could find, and that the luminosity or the vibration is what they sought because it was as close to God particle as any scientist could find. And so it was all for the research of the God particle. And once they get the God particle, which they'll never isolate it because it just won't accept that, I don't think. It has a consciousness, it's Christ consciousness. It'll never truly allow uh, malevolent manipulation for an end result. It might for a while, but I've been watching the trend of transhumanism and along with Bigfoot and cryptids, and of course they're using that. And so that's where they're using the fear-based understanding of Bigfoot too. Um, that's why we're not allowed to know too much about the benevolence of them.
Well, I find this a fascinating story, Cindy. I'm going to have to end our interview today,
Yeah,
but let's revisit this sometime and get into
yeah,
more of this. I really appreciate your honesty and your
yeah,
bringing forward a lot of this information I don't hear every day. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to say it. I don't come on too many shows and
mhm.
even talk to anybody right now, but you
Well,
know.
I appreciate you coming on mine and talking to me. I do seriously appreciate that. So,
Well, thank you, Linda.
okay, and I'll let you know when this comes out.
Okay, sounds great.